In a far distant village in Africa named Bedtime, where the royal family delved into the mystic arts to uncover the destinies of their newborns, there lived a king who welcomed a baby boy named Kasali into the world. It was a tradition as ancient as the village itself for the king, Emeka, to take his son to the oracle master to glimpse the threads of his fate, woven by the gods. As the oracle master peered into the swirling depths of his sacred pool, a heavy silence cloaked the room. His eyes, clouded with the mysteries of the future, widened in shock. King Emeka's heart pounded like a war drum, each beat louder than the last. The oracle master finally spoke, his voice trembling like the leaves in a storm. This child is a vessel of immense power, bestowed with charms by the gods themselves. His destiny is shrouded in darkness and startling as thunder in a clear sky. He will kill you, his own father, and take your place beside your wife. King Emeka started to murmur, his voice a low, trembling whisper. How can the gods bestow such a cruel fate upon my only son? His words were heavy with disbelief and fear. My son will kill me and marry my wife. No, such an abomination will not befall my family. Desperation flickered in his eyes like a candle in a storm. He turned to the oracle master, his voice now a harsh command. You will speak of this prophecy to no living soul, or you will lose your head. King Emeka left the oracle master, his mind a whirlwind of dread and determination. Returning to the palace, he was met by his wife, Queen Noma, her eyes bright with curiosity. What news do you bring from the oracle master? She asked, her voice light and hopeful. King Emeka forced a smile, masking the turmoil within. It is just a normal destiny, he lied smoothly. Our son will become king and do great things for the village. Queen Noma's face lit up with joy, her love for the child growing deeper with each passing moment. But beneath the surface of the king's deceit, the seeds of tragedy were sown, setting the stage for a dark future. For 7 long months, King Emeka maintained the facade of a doting father, his actions a carefully crafted masquerade. He cradled baby Kasali in his arms, his every gesture dripping with feigned affection. He would whisk Kasali away from Queen Noma, playing with him for hours, his laughter echoing through the palace halls. To the untrained eye, it seemed like the king's love for his son knew no bounds. But beneath this tender act lay a heart heavy with a dark and sinister plan. Each day, as he held his son close, King Emeka's mind churned with thoughts of the prophecy. The ominous words of the oracle master echoed in his ears like a haunting refrain. He would often find himself lost in thought, his eyes clouded with worry and dread. The king's heart was a battlefield, torn between his paternal instincts and the fear of his foretold doom. Finally, after a year, Kasali reached his first birthday, a milestone marked by uneasy celebration. The king approached Queen Noma, his request to carry Kasali and play with him as usual seeming innocent enough. Without hesitation, the queen handed over their son, her heart trusting and unknowing of the storm brewing beneath her husband's calm facade. King Emeka, with Kasali cradled in his arms, immediately summoned his loyal servant, Dima. Together, they ventured into the nearby Gij forest, a place of ancient mystery and tranquility reserved solely for the royal family. The forest of Gij, nestled by a vast, unexplored sea, held secrets that no villager dared to uncover. It was a haven of peace, where mystical beings and benign spirits resided, ensuring the serenity of the environment for the royals. On that fateful day, the weather was a perfect guise for the king's dark intentions. The sky was devoid of the harsh sun, casting a cool and gentle shade over the land. The air was crisp and refreshing, a deceptive calm before the impending storm. As they walked, the king's mind was a cauldron of sinister plans, hidden behind a mask of fatherly affection. As the king, young Kasali, and Dima strolled through the Gij forest, King Emeka's mind churned with sinister thoughts, searching for an excuse to be alone with his son. The presence of Dima was merely a guise, for the king's true intent was far darker than a mere walk. He knew that venturing out alone would arouse suspicion among the chief and the royal members. Suddenly, the sky betrayed them, and the sun burst forth with an almost unnatural intensity, casting harsh, blinding rays upon them. The cool, serene weather turned into an unbearable heat wave, as if the heavens themselves were privy to the king's wicked plan. With an evil smile curling his lips, King Emeka saw his opportunity. "Go to the palace and bring the royal umbrella," he commanded, his voice laced with false concern. "The sun is too harsh for me and my child." Dima, ever loyal, hesitated. "Your Majesty, it is not wise to remain here alone." "Perhaps I should." Before he could finish, the king's voice rose in fury. "Go to the palace and do as I command." Obediently, Dima hurried away, leaving the king and Kasali alone. The king's heart pounded with a mix of fear and resolve as he swiftly made his way to the nearby river that bordered the Jej forest. With cold determination, he lifted his innocent son and threw him into the vast, unexplored sea. As the baby sank beneath the waves, the king's voice echoed with finality, "Over my dead body will this prophecy come to pass." Disguising his true actions, King Emeka fled from the sea, his heart racing like a trapped animal's. He sprinted back to the Jej forest, his mind a whirl of deceit and desperation. As he reached the forest's edge, he began to shout, his voice a blend of panic and urgency, "Kasali! Kasali!" His cries pierced the tranquil air, echoing through the ancient trees. From afar, Dima heard the frantic calls and rushed back to the king's side, his face etched with concern. "What is the matter, Your Majesty?" he asked, breathless from his sprint. The king, masking his guilt with a facade of worry, replied, "I placed my only son down here to ease myself for a moment, and when I returned, he was gone." His voice trembled convincingly, his eyes wide with feigned distress. "Go to the palace and call for help immediately. We must find Kasali." Without a moment's hesitation, Dima turned and dashed towards the palace, his heart pounding with fear for the young prince. King Emeka watched him go, a cold satisfaction mingling with his dread. The wheels of his dark plan were now set in irreversible motion. All the palace guards and villagers joined in the frantic search for Kasali, combing through every inch of the Jej forest. Their shouts and calls filled the air, but the forest remained silent, offering no clue to the boy's whereabouts. To divert any suspicion from himself, King Emeka issued a drastic order. "Cut down the Jej forest tree by tree if you must. We must find my son." His voice was resolute, but a hint of desperation underlined his command. The chief, a wise and cautious man, stepped forward, his face creased with concern. "Your Majesty, what of the mysterious beings and benign spirits that dwell in this forest? They will be rendered homeless and might bring their wrath upon our village." The king's eyes hardened, his patience worn thin. "I do not care. Do as I say." His words were final, brooking no argument. Reluctantly, the villagers and guards set to work, their axes biting into the ancient trees. The forest that once stood as a sanctuary of peace and mystery was reduced to a desolate wasteland. The benign spirits and mysterious beings, now homeless and displaced, fled the village, their silent departure a harbinger of ominous times ahead. After a month of relentless searching, hope began to wane. The villagers and palace guards, weary and disheartened, started to believe that Kasali had been taken by a malevolent spirit or a monstrous creature lurking in the depths of the forest. Whispers of the boy's tragic fate spread through the village like wildfire, sowing seeds of sorrow and resignation. In their desperation, they turned to the Oracle Master, seeking the truth that only he could reveal. However, the Oracle Master was entangled in the king's web of deceit. He knew the grim reality but was bound by the king's threat. As the villagers and chiefs gathered around him, their eyes pleading for answers, the Oracle Master wove a tale of darkness. "The child," he began, his voice heavy with feigned sorrow, "was taken by a dark spirit that haunts the forest. Such spirits are beyond our power to retrieve. We must accept this loss and move forward." The villagers murmured in despair, their last flicker of hope extinguished by the Oracle Master's words. King Emeka stood among them, his face a mask of shared grief, though inside he was a tumult of conflicted emotions. The lie, now set in stone, weighed heavily on his conscience, but he dared not reveal the terrible truth. However, Kasali, a child imbued with the powerful charms of the gods, did not succumb to the depths of the sea so easily. The prophecy, an unyielding thread of fate, would not be severed. As he sank beneath the waves, the divine protection bestowed upon him sparked into action, keeping him safe until a kind soul could rescue him. In a distant village, far from the reach of Bedtime, a fisherman named Kola cast his nets into the sea. His sharp eyes caught sight of something unusual, a small bundle bobbing among the waves. With swift and practiced hands, Kola pulled the child from the water, marveling at the miraculous discovery. He named the boy Kasali, unaware of the child's royal blood and the dark prophecy that clung to his destiny. Kola already had a son, Oka, who was 10 years old when he brought Kasali into their home. Oka, 6 years older than the infant Kasali, watched with curiosity as his father cared for the mysterious child found at sea. Little did they know that Kasali's arrival would weave their fates together in ways they could not yet imagine. 20 years passed, and the once infant Kasali grew into a formidable young man, his every step echoing the strength bestowed upon him by the gods. Yet, within the humble home of the fisherman, a storm of envy brewed. Oka, now a man himself, could not conceal the bitterness that gnawed at his heart. He watched with smoldering jealousy as Kola lavished Kasali with love and care, treating him with a special kindness that Oka felt he deserved. Oka's resentment was a shadow that darkened his every thought. He knew the truth of Kasali's origin, that his father had pulled him from the sea and brought him into their home. This knowledge festered like a wound, making Oka view Kasali not as a brother, but as an interloper who had stolen his father's affection. Though Kasali's temper was fiery, a volatile mix of divine power and human emotion, he was also kind and helpful, a gentle giant to those who earned his trust. As Kasali matured, his strength and fortitude grew. He became a man of incredible power, his abilities a testament to the gods who had marked him for greatness. Unbeknownst to him, the prophecy that had once condemned his family still loomed over his life like a dark cloud. Kasali did not know he was adopted. To him, Kola was his true father, and Oka his brother. One fateful day, Kola the fisherman passed away while casting his nets into the sea, his lifeline finally cut. The village mourned the loss of a good man, but a darker tale was unfolding within Kola's family. As his possessions were divided, Kasali was stunned to find himself excluded. Oka, seizing the moment, revealed the secret that had long festered in his heart. "Kasali is not one of us," he declared, his voice filled with venom. "He was found in the sea and brought here by my father. He has no right to our family's property." Kasali, struck by the revelation, felt a tempest of emotions whirl within him. Betrayal, anger, and sorrow clashed violently as the truth of his origins shattered the life he had known. Kasali was stunned and heartbroken, the weight of the revelation crushing him like a tidal wave. For more than 20 years, he had lived a lie, unaware of his true origins. The betrayal gnawed at him, each moment a bitter reminder of the trust that had been shattered. Consumed by anger and confusion, he sought out the Oracle Master in their village, desperate for answers. The Oracle Master, peering into the swirling depths of his mystical pool, revealed the dark prophecy that had haunted Kasali's life. "You are destined to kill your father and marry your mother," he intoned solemnly. The words struck Kasali like a physical blow, his mind reeling from the enormity of his fate. Yet, in his revelation, the Oracle Master omitted one crucial detail, that Kasali was of royal blood. This omission would prove to be a critical oversight, setting the stage for even more complex trials in the future. Devastated and determined to thwart the prophecy, Kasali fled the village. He ventured deep into a distant forest, seeking solace in isolation. There, he built a humble hut, carving out a life of self-reliance. Using his God-given strength, he cultivated vast farmlands, transforming the wilderness into a bountiful oasis. The forest, unclaimed by any, became his sanctuary, and his farm grew to a size that could sustain an entire village for years. For 15 years, Kasali lived in peaceful seclusion, his days filled with the rhythm of planting and harvesting. The lands he tended flourished under his care, a testament to his resilience and power. To pass the time and keep his mind sharp, Kasali took up hunting as a hobby, stalking the forest's game with the skill and precision of a born predator. Back in the village of Bedtime, a dark shadow had fallen over the land. The mysterious beings and benign spirits that once resided in the Jej forest had cast a curse upon the village as retribution for the destruction wrought upon their home more than 20 years ago. This curse manifested as a relentless famine, with crops withering in the fields and seeds refusing to sprout. The once fertile land had turned barren, and the villagers were haunted by the specter of starvation. The villagers, their faces etched with worry and hunger, had tried every conceivable solution to lift the curse. They offered prayers, sacrifices, and even sought the counsel of distant oracles, but all efforts were in vain. The famine tightened its grip, and the village's food stores dwindled to a mere whisper of what they once were. Even the palace, which had always been a beacon of abundance, was now on the brink of running out of provisions. King Emeka, the weight of his past sins pressing heavily upon his shoulders, knew that quick and decisive action was needed. The cries of his people, the sight of empty fields, and the relentless gnawing of his own guilt drove him to seek a solution, no matter the cost. Desperation gnawed at King Emeka, and with no other options left, he turned once more to the oracle master. The old seer, his eyes clouded with age and mystery, revealed the grim truth. A curse had indeed been placed upon Bedtime, and the only way to lift it was for the king himself to carry a sacrifice to the land of the unknown to appease the gods. The oracle's words hung heavy in the air. The land of the unknown was shrouded in peril and darkness, a place where no man had ever ventured and returned. Those who dared to enter its borders were swallowed by its labyrinthine paths and haunted by its mysterious spirits. Even those fortunate enough to survive found themselves lost for years, wandering in circles, their minds and bodies battered by the unseen forces of the land. The journey is fraught with danger, the oracle intoned, his voice echoing with ancient wisdom. The spirits of the land are not kind, and their realm is a maze from which there is no escape. To venture there is to risk losing oneself forever. The king's heart pounded with a mix of fear and determination. The fate of his village hung in the balance, and the weight of his past sins pressed upon him like an iron shackle. He knew that to save his people, he must face the unknown, regardless of the peril that awaited him. The sacrifice must be made, and the gods must be appeased, or Bedtime would wither into oblivion. However, the oracle master continued, there was a glimmer of hope. Some powerful men, endowed with great strength and wisdom, had been known to navigate the treacherous paths of the unknown land and return. Moreover, with the aid of a potent charm, one could potentially find their way back to the village. The oracle's revelation sparked a flicker of hope in King Emeka's heart. "We must prepare such a charm," the king declared, his voice resolute. The oracle master nodded, and together they set about creating a powerful talisman, imbued with ancient magic and the blessings of the gods. This charm would be the king's guide, his beacon in the darkness of the unknown land. As the preparations were made, the king was also fortified with protective spells and enchantments, layers of mystical armor to shield him from the perils that awaited. Yet, despite the power of these fortifications, there remained an underlying uncertainty. Would they be enough to safeguard the king from the malevolent spirits and deadly traps of the unknown land? With the charm now in hand, glowing faintly with a supernatural light, and his body fortified with protective spells, King Emeka felt a mix of determination and trepidation. The journey ahead was fraught with danger, and even with the charm, the path to survival was uncertain. The lives of his people depended on his success, and the weight of their hope rested heavily upon his shoulders. The next day, with the first light of dawn casting long shadows across the village, King Emeka embarked on his perilous journey to the land of the unknown. With a calabash balanced carefully on his head and a layer of red powder atop it, He set out, each step heavy with the weight of his people's hopes. The red powder, infused with ancient magic, was the charm that would guide him back to Bedtime once he had presented the sacrifice to the gods. As he walked, the villagers watched with a mixture of fear and reverence. They whispered prayers and offered silent blessings, their eyes filled with the desperate hope that their king would succeed. The path ahead was shrouded in mist and mystery, the unknown land a foreboding presence on the horizon. King Emeka's heart pounded with a mix of determination and dread. The calabash felt heavier with each step, its contents a reminder of the grave task ahead. The red powder, glowing faintly in the dim light, seemed to pulse with a life of its own, a beacon that would either lead him home or be lost to the darkness. With a deep breath, the king steeled himself, his mind focused on the journey. The air around him grew colder, the landscape more alien and unwelcoming. Each step echoed with the whispers of ancient spirits, the very air thick with the weight of untold stories and forgotten souls. The land of the unknown awaited, its mysteries and dangers ready to test the king's resolve and the strength of the charm he carried. After a day of arduous walking, King Emeka had yet to reach the land of the unknown. The landscape grew increasingly strange and foreboding, with twisted trees and eerie silence replacing the familiar sights and sounds of his village. As night fell, a chill ran down his spine, a shiver that seemed to pierce through to his very soul. "Guess I am now in the land of the unknown," he muttered, his breath visible in the suddenly frigid air. He continued his journey cautiously, the darkness pressing in around him like a suffocating shroud. The ground beneath his feet was treacherous, and every step was fraught with hidden dangers. Suddenly, his foot slipped on a loose rock, and before he could catch himself, he tumbled over the edge of a hidden cliff. The world spun in a dizzying blur as he plummeted, the calabash and its precious red powder slipping from his grasp and falling into the abyss. The king's descent was brutally halted as he struck his head against a jagged stone. Pain exploded in his skull, and everything went black. He lay unconscious at the base of the cliff, the once glowing charm now lost in the darkness of the unknown land. The calabash lay shattered, the red powder scattered and useless. Hours passed, and the night grew colder, the land of the unknown showing no mercy to the fallen king. His body lay still, vulnerable to the malevolent spirits that roamed this forsaken place. The task of saving his village seemed more impossible than ever, as King Emeka's unconscious form lay at the mercy of an unforgiving land. The next morning, King Emeka awoke with a splitting headache, the early light of dawn casting long shadows across the desolate landscape. Pain and confusion clouded his mind, but soon the reality of his situation came crashing back. He was devastated, the weight of his failure pressing down on him like an iron yoke. Anger bubbled up inside him, a fiery rage at his own clumsiness and the cruel fate that had befallen him. Desperately, he searched the ground around him, his eyes scanning every crevice and shadow for the powerful charm. He turned over rocks, sifted through dirt, and peered into the darkness, but the charm was nowhere to be found. The calabash lay in shattered pieces, the red powder scattered and rendered useless. Without the charm, his way back home was lost. The enormity of his predicament struck him like a physical blow. He was stranded in the land of the unknown, a place that had swallowed many before him. The lives of his people hung in the balance, their salvation dependent on his ability to complete the sacrifice. Desperation clawed at his heart. If he could not find the charm and return to Bedtime, his village would succumb to the famine. The thought of his people starving, their hopes extinguished, was unbearable. He had to find a way to complete the sacrifice and lift the curse, or else watch his beloved village wither and die. Determined, King Emeka pushed himself to his feet, his resolve hardening. He would not let his people down. Even without the charm, he would find a way to navigate this treacherous land, to appease the gods and return home. His journey was far from over, and the stakes had never been higher. As a king fortified with ancient magic and wisdom, King Emeka summoned his remaining strength and began to chant incantations, calling upon the powers that had been bestowed upon him. His words, filled with desperation and determination, resonated through the air, weaving a spell of escape. Suddenly, a blinding light enveloped him, and he felt himself being pulled from the grasp of the land of the unknown. When the light faded, King Emeka found himself walking through a dense forest, his surroundings unfamiliar yet welcoming compared to the horrors he had faced. As he walked, he noticed vast stretches of fresh farmlands, their greenery vibrant and thriving. He realized that he had not returned to his village of Bedtime, but had stumbled upon another village, or perhaps a well-tended forest. After about 10 minutes of wandering, his eyes caught sight of a small firewood setup at the corner of a farm. Atop the fire, fresh meat was being roasted, its aroma tantalizing his senses. Hunger, a relentless companion for days, gnawed at him fiercely. Driven by instinct and desperation, King Emeka approached the firewood without hesitation. He did not bother to call out for the owner. The primal need for sustenance overrode his manners. With trembling hands, he reached for the roasted meat and began to eat voraciously, savoring each bite as if it were the finest feast. The savory juices and tender flesh revived his spirit, momentarily pushing aside the dire urgency of his mission. Yet, even as he ate, the forest around him seemed to watch, a silent witness to his plight, leaving an unsettling question lingering in the air. Whose fire was this, and what fate awaited him in this unknown land? Suddenly, the sound of approaching footsteps pierced the king's moment of ravenous indulgence. He froze, the piece of meat halfway to his mouth, his senses now alert. The forest seemed to hold its breath, the crackling of the firewood the only sound breaking the eerie silence. As King Emeka was about to turn and see who was coming, it was Kasali. Without a word, Kasali raised his gun and fired. The shot rang out, its sharp report echoing through the trees. The bullet whizzed through the air, heading straight for King Emeka. And that wraps up part 1. Do you think Kasali shot King Emeka, his father, at that very moment? Could it be that the prophecy is being fulfilled right there in the heart of the forest? Or is there another twist in their fate? Kindly drop your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Turn on the notification bell icon to get notified for part 2 of The Mother Who Got Pregnant for Her Son Who Murdered His Father. See you soon.